Picture yourself at 11 p.m. staring at a spreadsheet. Your body is exhausted, but your mind is still running numbers. Most of us heard two stories about success. One says, grind until you win. And the other says, peace comes only after you escape. There's a name for what you're doing and a practice for what you're feeling. Neither one requires you to become someone else. But here's what most advice misses when people tell you to get more rest. The problem isn't that you don't know sleep matters, because you already know that. The problem is that closing your laptop and actually lying down feels like surrender. And surrender is the one thing your ambition won't allow. There's a name for what happens at 11 p.m. when you trade rest for one more scroll or one more row of data. It's called revenge bedtime procrastination. Researchers first spotted it among workers in China who worked impossibly long days. They stayed up late, not because they weren't tired, but because they needed to feel like they owned their time again after a day that felt owned by someone else. That isn't poor discipline. It's what happens when you lose control of your waking hours, and you don't have to work in a factory for this to apply. The same pattern shows up in every profession where someone else owns your day. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine polled people in 2025 and found that 74% report disrupted sleep from stress, while 68% report disrupted sleep from anxiety. That isn't a small group, because it's most of the people you work with, too. But the real cost goes deeper than being tired tomorrow. It's the loneliness of being awake when the world has stopped. The spreadsheet won't talk back, and the email won't send itself. And somewhere in that quiet, your mind is still trying to earn its keep because it doesn't know any other way to matter. It never learned how to clock out, and you're stuck performing for an audience of one in a darkened room. So what do you do with that? Most advice says to fix your sleep with better pillows, blue light filters, and meditation apps that promise to calm you with the sound of waterfalls. Those things help, but they're aiming at the wrong target. The real issue isn't your bedtime routine. Your mind learned to measure its worth by what it produces, and that measurement doesn't stop when the office lights go out. During the day, that pattern looks like healthy ambition, but at 11 p.m., the same drive shows up as restlessness because it's the same engine running in a darker room. Buddhist teachers call this attachment to outcomes, not things. Your mind has tied your value to the next quarter's numbers, the next promotion, and the next proof that you're enough. And because that proof is always waiting in the future, your mind never stops reaching. The finish line keeps moving. Non-attachment isn't about not caring, and that's the big misunderstanding. It means the result no longer decides how you feel about yourself. In plain terms, you can want the promotion and still sleep before the decision comes in. You can care about the project and still close the laptop when your body asks you to, and the desire stays, even though the grip on it loosens a little at a time. And here's where it gets interesting. There's a paradox that most high performers never notice. The tighter you hold success, the less you feel it when it arrives. And your mind just grabs the next number instead of resting. The WHO calls this burnout. It's chronic occupational stress that never gets managed because the stressor lives inside your own expectation. You did it to yourself slowly, by teaching your mind that rest is something you must earn, instead of something you simply need. Ancient teachers didn't have quarterly earnings calls, but they understood the mind that chases its own tail. So they called it the hungry ghost, always eating and never full. The spreadsheet at midnight becomes a modern version of that same hunger, and seeing it clearly is the first step towards slowly learning to feed yourself something other than just more work. There are 3 specific practices that don't require you to become someone else. The first is called noting, and it's simple even though it takes a little patience. When your mind jumps to tomorrow's meeting at midnight, you don't follow the thought. You name it: planning, worrying, rehearsing. You treat your own mind like a radio playing in the background, and you hear it without turning the volume up. So the thought passes because you didn't grab it or wrestle with it. Mindfulness teachers point to exactly this. And it's not about stopping the thoughts or forcing your brain to be quiet, which is a relief, because quiet isn't the goal. It's about changing your relationship to them. A thought arrives as a sound, not a command, and sounds don't run your life the way commands do. Now, the second piece of this is just as important. The second practice is a boundary, not a full digital detox, because most of us can't do that. You need one clear signal that the performing mind is off duty, and that signal has to be the same every night, so your body learns to relax. Maybe it's a 10-minute walk or a cup of tea before you check anything else. The action itself doesn't matter. Your nervous system just needs to learn when the day actually ends. You have to repeat it, because your body picks up what you actually do instead of what you plan to do. Now, the third practice is the one that ties the others together. It's a question, not a mantra. And you ask it once a day about one small decision to see whether you're making that choice from stability or from the fear of falling behind. Try it on an email, a meeting response, a purchase you don't need, or a commitment you made 6 months ago that no longer fits where you're going. Right livelihood isn't a grand gesture. It's the meeting where you tell the truth when lying would be easier, and it's the boundary you hold when holding it costs you something right now. The question reveals whether your next move comes from steadiness or from panic. And steadiness over time is what builds a life you don't need to escape from. These three things work together, but the results are quiet, so they're hard to see at first. Noting handles the mind that won't stop talking. The boundary teaches your body that rest is safe. And the question keeps your ambition from becoming a runaway train that wrecks everything you built. You don't need a retreat or a major life change. You don't need to quit your job or shave your head. The real work is much smaller than that. They just require attention. You notice what is actually happening instead of what you think should be happening. And that small noticing changes everything. That attention repeated becomes a different kind of strength. Not the strength of pushing harder, but the strength of knowing exactly when to stop, and then actually following through on that knowing, even when it feels uncomfortable. If you do this consistently, something shifts that isn't just about sleep. You start to picture the same high-pressure career with a mind that no longer has to rehearse every conversation. At midnight, the promotion still matters, and the project still matters, but your peace isn't waiting at the finish line anymore. It's traveling with you. Wealth built on a restless mind and wealth built on a steady one might look the same on a spreadsheet, but one lets you sleep at night, and over time, that changes every decision you make. The project will end, and the number will change, but the only stable ground comes from the quality of attention you bring to whatever is in front of you. They call that equanimity, not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of steadiness inside it. A lot of people think equanimity means you don't feel things, but it's the opposite. Equanimity means you feel the stress fully without letting it knock you over. And that is a completely different way of being in the world than the one most of us were taught. The ancient teachers pointed to exactly this when they talked about the middle path. Not indifference to the world, but a full engagement with it that doesn't depend on the world behaving a certain way before you allow yourself to feel okay. The spreadsheet at midnight acts like a habit, and the way you meet it is a choice that slowly becomes the life you actually live when you repeat it often, enough to make it stick. The habit can change, and so can you, but only if you see it clearly first before the exhaustion chooses for you. The mind that won't stop performing doesn't need fixing, and it's doing what you taught it during all those years when rest felt like weakness. Tonight, when the spreadsheet appears in your head, try one thing. Name it without following it, and let it pass like any other sound in the night. Your work will be there tomorrow. Ask yourself if you'll meet it rested or running on fumes.